specifically, his job was to be the eyes and ears and boots on the ground in the Vietnam War by the then Secretary of State, Robert McNamara. And to his disgust, what Daniel Ellsberg discovers is the incredible series of lies that has happened as a result of the Vietnam War continuing to, and the atrocities that were happening on both sides, and takes it upon himself to do something about that. I think what was incredible at the time is that they knew, they had seen what had happened to the New York Times. So they knew the consequences were huge, that there were real stakes. There were kind of careers and possibly lives at risk, not end of life, but certainly they could be looking at jail time. Because, it wasn't the first foray like the New York Times and then being hit by the injunction. They knew what could potentially happen. So they adhered to the amendment and said, no, freedom of the press, this is what we will do, and suffer the consequences. It was an exceptionally brave move. Kay Graham was truly a pioneer of the cutting edge of journalism that could potentially and did take down an administration. So yes, it was incredibly selfless and courageous and brave what they and she did. It was incredible, really, that given the injunction that was hit on the New York Times, what it proved to me is that the Constitution, that amendment stood. That it was almost unheard, unthought of, that you could print something that would ultimately take down an administration, or tell the country that you'd been lied to by your past 4 presidents. Unheard of. But what was great is that the government themselves, the way that the Constitution is written, is that it does protect we the people. That's exactly what it is. It served exactly its wording. And I think that began this new wave of incredibly brave and open journalism, where you could attack governments if it was just. And that's what it did, was it reiterated and strengthened the fact that there is that amendment about freedom of the press. I suppose a big question I had for him was, during this time, had the largest FBI manhunt after him in decades. I said, were you scared? And he said, no, I wasn't, because I had such conviction in what I was doing. And that to me was a real key into who he was, because there wasn't this kind of breathy, panicked, wide-eyed, angst-ridden person cowering in a motel with thousands of pages. He was very assured of what he did, and what he'd also said very early on, he was more than happy to go to prison for his actions. So it preempted any worry, really. He knew exactly what he wanted to do and would suffer the consequences. I had great days with Bob Odenkirk for many reasons, primarily for laughing a lot. Obviously, he makes you laugh a lot. But it was no surprise. I know his work. It was no surprise that that he can turn his hand to anything. So there certainly wasn't any shock. He's just he's a great scene partner.